it's kind of a mystery, right? And we know what Google tells us to do. We know what our SEMrush, Moz knows what to do. And then when you apply it in practice, maybe sometimes it's different. I think that's kind of the things we want to try to uncover today. Pass it to you, Grace.
Yeah, I'm Grace Wright, a strategist here at Gorilla. Where I kind of come from is kind of the full spectrum of SEO. So like in a past life, I was a copywriter at an SEO specific like specialty agency. So I've seen it all in terms of like what motivates people to do SEO, so to speak, as well as, being in the trenches, writing keyword focused content, as well as transitioning to more the strategy side where I'm orchestrating the whole ordeal. So that's kind of my experience, at least as it pertains to what we'll be discussing today.
Cool. And I'm Matt Shanahan, I'm strategy director for Gorilla. My SEO experience mostly extends to my in-house experience doing a lot of content, a little bit on the technical side as well, and really just sort of paying attention a lot to like where opportunities existed and trying to attack them, really utilizing content diversification to not only rank for things that I want, but frankly, dominate the search engine results page when the opportunity presented itself. And so those are a couple of the things that we definitely want to touch on here and we will dive into. If you have questions, drop them in here. I'm going to try to, where's my questions panel? I'll find it. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. I'm going to try to figure out the Q&A portion of it as well. Here's what we'll cover for the webinar. We're going to talk about what not to do because, it's really hard to talk about what to do until you know what not to do. Should you even still care about SEO? I think that's definitely a question that is worth considering in this day and age, just given how competitive it is in the landscape and how much Google changes the algorithm. And also, frankly, how people just buy and make buying decisions. Google is just kind of one part of that journey, and it's increasingly becoming the last part of it. So definitely something to consider there. How to approach SEO in 2021 and beyond. Okay, so we've decided we want SEO. What do we do now? Data literacy, because I think and Aaron has a really good portion of this presentation on it, because it's one thing to like want to do SEO. It's another thing to like look at it from a literacy standpoint and understand what you're looking at and how to make adjustments based off of it. I will do a little bit in the technical SEO. I'm really not going to dive deep into coding and stuff like that. That's not something that I would consider myself specialist in. It's going to be more of some of the back-end stuff you can do to clean up and speed up your website. And then we'll do Q&A. So if y'all have some questions on SEO and we can answer them, we definitely want to hear those. So really excited with that. So let's dive in and let's talk about what not to do. And so to kick us off, it's going to be Grace, I believe. So Grace, go do your thing.
Yeah, for sure. What not to do. Possibly the most fun part of the presentation. I kind of broke this into, basically there are three things I see people do as it pertains to kind of the mindset they come to SEO with that I think we should move away from. So mindset, why are you doing SEO in the first place? What's your motivation? Prioritization. I've never met a marketer who has too much budget and too much time. So what are we going to do to decide what's most important? What are we doing first? How are we going to use our limited resources? And then what are you optimizing for? Search engine optimization. What are we optimizing for? So kind of diving in mindset. I think that this is the, so Matt, if you want to move forward.
Yeah, just say next slide real quick. I'll run.
All right, perfect. Yeah, mindset. I think that this is like the most important part as far as like what people do wrong, because ultimately, like once you decide what your motivation is, everything stems from that one guiding principle. So this is what I've seen a lot, especially from clients. At my, SEO specialty agency that I used to work for. And I think when people are doing the wrong things, this is where they start. We need to do this for SEO. Let's rank for as many terms as possible. And so when you use this as your starting point, your reasoning for using SEO as a tactic, you'll launch into a lot of the wrong activities, things that might have worked in 2005, but they just simply won't. Won't work in 2021. It's much too cavalier of an attitude. So just kind of taking this idea to its logical conclusion. Next slide. So you will, start with this long list of, dream keywords that you want to rank for. Who cares if you have the expertise to, deliver value in these search engine results pages? Just like you start with the keywords that you want to rank for. Next slide. Then when you are actually creating that content, you're just stuffing it full of the keywords. I think I included an example here from Google Search Central Quality Guidelines, but essentially, like, if you have a target keyword for a page and you Control F for that particular phrase and your page lights up like a Christmas tree, that's keyword stuffing. It worked 10 years ago, it won't work now. And ultimately it just doesn't sound natural. It's not delivering the best experience. But if you're using this as your motivation, it motivates this kind of behavior. Next slide. The next thing is, if you're just trying to rank for as many keywords as possible, who cares about the experience? The finished content is just going to be, writing thin 300-word pages, one for every keyword, and moving on. I've even seen, especially when it's just for SEO, no one's interviewing customers, no one's interviewing subject matter experts. It's just about getting 300 words on a page, moving on to the next one, which just isn't the best experience. This type of thinking might have worked for you in 2005. It won't work now. If you move to the next slide, it just stopped working, first of all, several updates ago. And moreover, it's just not the best user experience for searchers. If you think about, ranking in a search engine results page as a potential touch point with a prospective customer, you have to be thinking about, is that ranking is only half of the battle, right? You also have to be thinking about the trust and credibility you're building or eroding once they're on the page, which I think is really important. So if you go to the next slide, here's, I think, the better mindset. So we need to do this for prospective customers. Providing answers in search is one way to do this. And if this is your motivating factor, you're going to be doing a lot of the right things, such as, next slide. So you start by thoroughly understanding your customers. This includes investigative interviews, truly understanding their pain points, their day-to-day, their stressors, the questions that they ask about your industry and about your products. Next slide. Then you'll conduct research. Yes, you'll do keyword research to understand trends as far as how people are phrasing these questions in search, so you can optimize your content around that. And then, the last step, content creation, really you're just seeking to create the comprehensive answer to the questions that your target audience is asking in the phrases that they are asking them. And so if you move to the next slide, so basically to sum up the mindset portion, I think it's just a shift from like, are we doing this for SEO to we're doing this for prospective customers. Aaron and Matt, do you guys have anything to add there?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick, Matt. Grace, you and I have talked about this so much, and I think we've kind of come up with the verbiage, and I think this is what really packs it and makes it real tight, makes sense to everyone. Is like, instead of saying, I want to win on these keywords, let's say, I want this piece of content to help my customer win X, Y, and Z. And like just that shift can really help you with that mindset, get you out of looking at spreadsheets of keywords and get you talking to your customers and seeing what they say, receiving that information, and go writing content for it. And that's kind of the thing we're really talking about too, is like, when we're talking about SEO, we're really talking about content strategy and being a good copywriter and being a good investigator. And just that shift can really help you with that mindset. Matt and Grace.
It's kind of the shift between doing it SEO for SEO's sake versus, thinking of search as a channel with which to reach your target customers and address their questions.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. I think both of you covered that pretty thoroughly. Let's jump here about what to prioritize, which I think you have this, Grace.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of what I said earlier, no one has too much budget or too much time. So I think strategy is as much about what you don't do or what you deprioritize as it is about what you do. With internal teams, it's deciding what pages are you and your team personally going to spend time on. If you work with an outside partner for content creation, the limiting factor is budget. So what are you going to focus your budget on? So let's say you have thoroughly understood your audience. You understand the phrases they're using in search. You're using SEO as a tactic to reach your audience and deliver value to them. You know, if you're deciding what to do and what not to do, I think the factors that you would use to make that decision would be, you know, how important is answering this question to your customer? If it's less important to them, but more important to you, maybe you don't write that piece. I think another thing is degree of importance to your business. Do you even sell this? Sometimes, like I, as an SEO copywriter, have been given assignments where, you know, we want to rank for this keyword. Great, you don't even offer that service though. It's like, well, don't worry about it. We'll change their minds and they're going to decide that they want to work with us. Like do you buy like that? Like, just, I think some of this has to pass the logic test. So potentially, like, do you have the expertise to provide education on this? Is it important to your business? How profitable is it? Those are the types of questions you should be asking with that second bullet point. Third one, a little bit more technical, but you know, just ability to rank. Like what's the difficulty of this keyword? What type of competition is there? Is this a blue ocean opportunity where there really isn't a ton of content out there addressing this question? Absolutely write that. If it's a little bit more difficult, maybe deprioritize that, do that next quarter or something like that. But those are kind of the three questions I would use to prioritize and decide, you know, what you're doing now, what you'll save for later. Next slide.
Yep.
And then the last point I really want to talk about with what not to do, I have this on the slide. I think search engine optimization is a misnomer. Yes, you're trying to optimize your content so that it, you know, plays by Google's rules and shows up, you know, first in a search engine results page. But ultimately, I mean, if you think about the changes that they've made over the years, as far as, you know, what types of content they're penalizing, it's not random. Like their job is to deliver the best experience to the searcher, help put searchers in touch with the best information to address their concern, address their problem, answer their question. I think that in the long term, the best play is just to align with search intent. So, you know, understand what people are searching, understand why they're searching it, create the best experience, comprehensively answer the question, doggedly pursue that answer. And ultimately, your content will be future-proofed in a way that it won't be if you're, you know, like, Google cares about this, and here's this rule, and I need to mention it 3 times. And then like that whole song and dance is just kind of like, yes, it's important to understand best practices, but understand that it's going to be a human searching it and a human looking at the results page and a human interacting with your content. And either their trust in your brand is going to increase or decrease based off of the experience you provide on the page and the expertise you're lending. Just understanding that whole experience from start to finish. I think too many people are focused on rankings for ranking's sake. You have to think about that start to finish experience for the searcher and what they're learning about your brand based off of the content you're providing.
Grace, can I jump in with an example here? Of
course.
Exactly what Grace is saying is like ranking for ranking's sake. If we focus on that, like what are the outcomes? There's been a real life example in the last 2 to 3 weeks here in the SEO community. I'll kind of try to explain it concisely, but you know, we've been told the last couple of years that things like the H1 is not a ranking signal. So therefore, if we're following the algorithm rules, we're like, okay, we're not going to focus time and effort there. We know that title tags are a ranking signal. The title tags are used to have the title on Google search engine result pages when you search for something. Well, the last 3 weeks, Google has been messing around with that. And they've been pulling the H1 tags onto Google SERP to have the title there. So like, for example, they were seeing it a lot in the SEO community with like the New York Times. It's like now the headlines are your title on the Google search and result pages. So if you were just following the book by the algorithm, well, heck, you screwed yourself, right? Because you weren't counting for that. You didn't know what was going to happen. You actually could have been impacted in a negative manner over the last 2 to 3 weeks, and you wouldn't even have known it. So that being said, it's like, if you follow the book about the algorithm all the time, you got to work with those chapters. what we're kind of saying is if you just follow the path of like Wright for your audience and not Google, you don't even have to worry about that, right? As Grace kind of said, just that searcher's intent is so important. If you follow that as your North Star, then like you don't have to be beholden to Google and what Google does all the time. Rather, you can be beholden to your customers and helping your customers out how you want to do it.
Yeah, you're never going to lose by providing the best experience and the best answers for your target audience.
Right.
This kind of brings this all full circle, but before trying to rank for a keyword, and I'll give a couple examples of like, this is my logic test. Like, should you write this piece of content or should you not? So before trying to rank for a keyword, ask yourself, do I understand the intent behind the search? Like, what is someone actually looking for? Look at what's currently ranking, what Google, is interpreting as what the searcher wants. Think about, in past customer interviews, like, do you understand what someone is looking for when they're searching this? The other question would be, if you understand the intent behind the search, think about your most profitable customers and the conversations you've had with them. Do they have this problem? Would they ask this question? Is this like, for instance, if you're selling a commercial product, is this someone looking for the household version of it? Is this someone who's, so uneducated on your particular, like does it show an intent that is misaligned with who you're trying to target, essentially? Do I have the expertise to answer this question or solve this problem? An example of this is like, for instance, if you make products, let's say like bakery racks made out of steel, should you rank on ways to prevent steel corrosion? You probably don't have the expertise to do that. Moreover, that type of content isn't addressing the questions that someone would be asking about a bakery rack. This is something I see a lot. So I want to stay on this question for a bit. I see a lot of like, especially when people start with a list of keywords, they choose ones that are just so almost tangentially related to what they do that it's the equivalent of like, I'm on the Zoom on a Mac, so I'm going to write articles on Macs because that's tangentially related to what I do. And I see a lot of like very reach keywords that people want to target, especially in industrial, where there really sometimes isn't a ton of search volume around what people are selling. So they really reach for these keywords that, either speak to too much of a residential intent, or it's the equivalent of, talking about different types of steel when really your product's made from steel and no one's even asking that question when they're thinking about buying your product. So just kind of, I think that fourth one's really important. And then the last one, which I think always deserves the place when you're talking about SEO, everyone talks about how to rank. I think what you need to be asking as follow-up is like, how will I ensure that ranking, like if I rank, how will I ensure that this touch point builds trust and credibility with my brand? So always making sure that you're delivering that experience if you're going to rank at all.
Cool. Real quick before we move on, I'm seeing questions, but I can't see them necessarily. I'm going to X out this really quickly just so I can pop these questions. There they are. All right, there they are. Okay. So Matt Park asks about schema markup in terms of an SEO tactic. Hang tight with me, Matt, because I do touch on schema markup later. So I will certainly answer that question. Let's go back to the let's go back to this, and we're gonna roll this. This is the last slide you had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think if you've answered all of those questions and the piece passes, or the keyword passes the logic test, then just do your research, visualize the piece of content that provides the best answer to that intent, and then make it. And I don't think you can lose if that's the process you follow.
Perfect. All right. So this is Aaron. Why should you care about SEO in 2021? You wanna go for it?
Yeah. I'll frame this up for everyone. One, thank you, Grace. You did the do's and don'ts, which I think is like super important for this. Like if you follow those things like Grace just pointed out, like you're going to win at this. What I'm going to do is kind of talk about the why, the philosophy of it. I always like to lead these with this, but everyone pulls me back. It's like, Aaron, do the philosophy at the end here. So you're getting it now, but I really want to talk about like the why you should care about it, and then like, where's this going and how does that impact our thinking, impact our strategy, impact our tactics? So I just bare bones here, I'm going to kind of talk through these and I'm going to kind of show you some examples. So with SEO, I think we normally hear two things. It's either SEO is dead and I don't want to focus on it, or wow, we've really been good at SEO like for our whole existence as a company. Let's just continue to do that. So that's spectrum, right? It's dead, or we should do it all the time. Okay, that's fine. You can have absolutes in life, but what we need to be as marketers is in the middle, right? What makes the most sense to us, our business, our strategy, our tactics. So that being said, I think SEO should always be a part of your strategy. And that kind of goes to that first bullet there. Basically, questions always lead to answers. This is really coming from Marcus Sheridan's They Ask You Answer, which is your customers have questions and they need to talk to someone about it. Why don't we just answer them and put them on the website? That will always ring true. That works, right? I think I wrote down there's 5.6 billion searches performed a day. Your customers are asking questions, right? So let's continue to write content to answer them. I think that's the why. And now what we're going to kind of get into is what levers should we pull? What should we focus on? With the evolution of search, does that make us think differently about it? So I'll kind of pivot to that next bullet. Evolution of search. When I did this presentation for Gorilla, one thing I commented on was there's just more ways to search than ever. And it just keeps expanding. Like you can now go on your TV, right? And talk into your remote and ask it a question and it will pull up a video. You know, that's that combination of video and voice. Those are two components that weren't around 10 years ago, right? And now we're just seeing them expand. It's you can do it on your Apple Watch. You can do it on your phone. I think in 10 years, there's going to be an even new way to search. So we're just going to have more questions, right? So we need to keep writing content about answers. And then kind of the last thing here I have on here is I think this is why people don't do well at SEO. It's this idea of the spike of hope followed by the flat line of nope. And I got that from Brandon Hufford and his SEO community, SEO for the Rest of Us. Check that out. But we'll kind of talk and articulate that point. But once you see it, you're going to be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So Matt, you can go to the next slide.
Oh.
Totally. So yeah, I brought this up. One thing is I brought this up because does anybody go to google.com and then search on Google? And if you do, like put your hand up in the chat.
Just give me a +1 in the chat.
Give a +1. I think I always find this funny because I'm a millennial and I will never do this, but I see my parents do it all the time. So I don't want to devalue it, right? I think with searching, it's very personal. It's very subjective. People search in different ways. And sometimes you got to think about that too. Now, I just brought this up because I wanted to kind of articulate, they ask you answer. Do you have a keyword phrase? There's a bunch of different questions, a bunch of different topics in there. Like ideally, you can just start writing stuff for those if they apply to your business and strategy. So that's always a good starting point for the why. Like, let's just answer these questions. Matt, you can go to the next slide. Okay. Wanted to show this. It's been a while since we've all seen this, right? The first ever SERP layout, search engine result page layout for Google. Pretty bare, very link heavy. We've come a far way from this, and we really need to think about it differently. Why this layout kind of mattered to us back in the day is, you know, it was based on links and based on keywords. So as Grace kind of said, that keyword stuffing was important. You needed to articulate like why that link had content and what was the content. So it was very link and keyword heavy. Now, if you go to the next slide, Matt, I can't remember if I go straight into this. But yeah. Now look at the search engine result page. Oh my goodness. It's just so many different things on it. I want to talk about my headline there. 65% of searches in 2020 result in 0 clicks. I think I got that from Search Engine Land. This idea that you have questions and you write answers, now that's even evolving, right? You can almost get all your answers just from Google search engine result page without anyone visiting your website. So if you look at my first image there, that's the people also ask box. Those are other search queries, right? People can just find the answer by pulling open that caret and seeing the text. Videos. If you enter a video search query, Google's just going to pull up the video. Now they have this interesting snippet here where it's like you can even navigate to the video with that question within it. Insane. And then on the last one, it's like the knowledge panel on the right, which I have another example too. But really, I just want to articulate that when Grace was talking about like writing for your audience, we're talking about on your website. But here's like another layer. It's like, can you just answer questions and those questions be found on Google in a very efficient manner? And like your customer may come to your site. And like, how does that impact the way we think? How does that impact our strategy, our tactics? Matt, you can go to the next slide. And then I just want to bring up video again, because I think the other thing we often forget is like the second biggest search engine in the world is YouTube. And there's just so much room tactically where you can play in here. And we're not going to get too deep into this, but you know, you see ads in YouTube right there. You see some videos that come up with that search query organically. And then in Google Search Console, which is that other image, like you can now just start to see what queries brought up your videos. I think video is it's a huge play, right? If you're not doing video now, it's something you should think about and think about it short-term and long-term. Short-term is if your competitor has videos on a keyword search phrase and you don't, you're never going to win that search phrase. So you should make video. And then long-term, thinking about, okay, as more people search video, is video our content strategy now? Is it more important than the written word? I don't know. That's just guessing there, but that's kind of all these things percolating in our head as we think about how search is evolving. Go next slide, Matt. Okay, so this one, someone else, I saw this on Twitter. I was like, this is creepy and weird, is you can almost get all your answers on Google SERP now. So this is an interesting example, like what is Angus beef, not B2B related, but it's like, if you look at this search engine result page, you have different options on the page as far as feature snippets, other snippets on here. On the right-hand side of the knowledge panel, there's like more questions that's outside the people also ask box. There's the people also ask box. You know, it's just, there's so much going on there. And like, this may impact your strategy, maybe it doesn't, but I just think we got to know that people can find all their answers straight from Google. And like, does that change the way we do things? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
Can I
think
pop in
that's
here?
the last one. Go ahead, Grace.
I was just gonna say, I think that like it comes back to what you were saying, like a lot of people are like, SEO is the best thing ever. SEO is dead. I think one reason to fall in the middle is like, I think a lot of people look at SEO as like their whole marketing strategy, and it's like where they start and stop their thinking. I think one problem with that is kind of this example that you just pulled up here. You know, Google is going to continually evolve and deliver the best experience. And that might not mean people end up on your site and even know that the answer is coming from your brand. And so I think that's why you have to look at SEO as a channel, as a tactic, and not as a strategy. It's one way to reach your audience, and you have to diversify beyond just SEO as a channel, so that you're making sure you're reaching your audience, you have redundancy there, and you kind of future-proof reaching your audience with answers to their questions.
So we got a question real quick from Aya. Thanks so much for this question, and it seems relevant right now, given what you're talking about, Aaron. With Google moving towards a machine learning approach, do you think making content easy for the audience to understand will take care of SEO? And if yes, where do we look to be better at making content easy for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I'm not exactly sure how to answer. I'm going to try to answer it in this way, which is, I think when we talk about content as easy, it's content as usable. And I think the best way to get usable, easy content is talking to your customers and then writing for exactly what they're asking. Whereas maybe the last 10 years, what you could do with digital marketing is I just go look up keyword volume, right? There's search demand here. I'm seeing people searching for, I'm going to write a piece of content. I think if you try that approach, like with machine learning, and then I'm going to talk about natural language processing, Google may get better at you at doing that if you try it that way. Like they just have computers that can write content and find these patterns. But if you're always talking to your customer and writing directly for what they want, that's a direct path to good, usable, easy content. The other path, it's just getting harder and harder, which is like you just start with keywords and then you write content. I don't feel confident anymore. That's why I don't suggest it. Much rather suggest talking to your customers than writing content that way. Matt and Grace, I don't know if you have a different way you want to answer that.
You, Grace, I can chime in. Be happy to.
No, I think the way you answered it is spot on. Not much to add.
When you talk about making content easy for the audience, it also has to do with diversifying the content that you have. I mean, look at what you're seeing on this slide right here. Image packs, you're looking at an infograph. Two of those are just straight up infographics that you're looking at, where it's easy to process what you're looking at. And then also video, which will always show up when the search engine result page and the intent looks like it's going to bias itself towards video. So in terms of making content easy, you need to match what the searcher is looking for. It goes all the way back to search intent. And it also has to do with just diversifying that content for that term. And in terms of making the content easier for the audience in the written word, I think a lot of that is just how you write and communicate to your audience. And so writing like you talk and then doing the front end work with the customer interviews, I think are just kind of keys to like helping with SEO, helping people consume your content and understand it, and then helping make what you create and write for them easy to consume and digest. I'm not saying you have to write like you talk, like very colloquially, but if you look at how like newspapers write content, or how, you know, people who do really good copywriting write content, it's extremely, they strip out all the technical jargon that I think a lot of industrial marketing professionals use, that I think does way more to confuse the audience than actually inform them. And so when you think about it, when you say easy, what you really mean is simple, and simple is actually good. And I wouldn't overcomplicate your efforts when it comes to doing content, whether that's for SEO or social or any channel that you use.
Yeah, I lied. I do actually have something to add here. I think that part of the superpower, if I'm focusing only on written content, is making it easy to understand. I think that I used to lead what used to be the writing department here, and the kind of rule of thumb I've always used to evaluate is 90% of like the people that you're trying to speak to, which varies depending on your client. So, or your brand. You might be speaking to engineers, you might be speaking to, you know, whoever your target audience is, but 90% of that audience should be able to understand exactly what you're trying to say. So I think making it as simple as possible should always be your charge in any content creation. That would expand over to video and other media as well.
Let me know if that was helpful for you. And if not, if you want to ask more detail, we can try to definitely get more detail behind it. All right, let's hit the next slide. Go for the spike, I hope, real quick, Aaron.
Yeah, okay. So I'll be quick with this one. Basically, what the SEO we've been doing for the last 10 years has resulted in this. I'll kind of explain it, right? Is you try to rank for a keyword, you write a piece of content for it. Naturally, because you made a new piece of content, it gets crawled and indexed by Google, gets put on SERP, it gets pushed onto SERP so you can actually land on it. So now you have an uptick in traffic because that's just how indexing works. And then what do? You don't touch the article again. You don't do anything with it. Why? Because you moved on to write a new article to rank for a new keyword. So what happens to that article is like, okay, now your traffic dips. Okay, it keeps going. All right, then eventually you just don't get any traffic on it, right? That's the flat line of note. So I think for the last 10 years, we've really been so obsessed with winning keywords and not obsessed enough with writing for our customers, that's probably what, if you go into analytics right now and you look at some articles you've made in the last couple of years, you probably have a flat line of nope. Now, there's several ways you can handle this. I think Matt's going to get into kind of the approach of SEO to kind of fix this. But I think the biggest thing to take out of this is, as long as you're writing content for your customer, you keep improving it, remix it, repurpose it, you're going to avoid the flat line of nope. What we're kind of recommending is like, stop writing content to rank for keywords, because this is what you'll deal with all the time. Go ahead, Matt.
All right. So this is where I will get in, but you guys have touched on so much of this already. I don't really need to touch much on this, but SEO is a distribution channel. We've said this a bunch of times and it's still true. So starting with outside keywords, to me, the best way to start with SEO for your company is look inside your company for sure on keywords within your website to see where you can improve ranking. You're gonna find out how Google looks at your website by using tools like Google Search Console. And it's going to essentially tell you like, okay, you rank for this keyword and this is the page where your keyword shows up for. So when you use that kind of keyword research with your customer research, you can make more content for SEO. And whereas in the past, where quantity was super important because you needed to just rapidly make content for SEO. Now quality is more important than ever. So doing more with less is going to actually help you more than trying to ship out a bunch of 500 word blog posts or things of that nature. So focusing on quality is going to help you much more than just rapid production. Quantity to me matters more so on organic social or paid social, where you need rapid content distribution with the frameworks in place to create quality consistently over time. So looking at Google, first off, if you are not using Google Search Console, anyone here who's not using Google Search Console, get it set up for your company, because this to me is the number one free tool you have at your disposal for SEO. So looking at Search Console, like immediately the first thing you want to look at is like turn on the filter so you can see your click-through rate on your terms and then your position, which is the column on the far right there. And so like the first thing I do is I look for terms where I'm kind of within that range, and does it, first off, doing all the things that Grace talked about, does it fit my business? Is it a term that I want to win on and is going to help me generate new business for my company? And if the answers to those are all yes, then what I'm looking for is I'm looking for those keywords where I'm in that, 8 to 4 range. And if you have to go a little farther outside 8 because you're just a little farther out there, then so be it. But 8 to 4 is where you can win like pretty fast. But I think you also have to look at, when you look at a term like that, you click in there and you're going to be able to see, well, which page am I actually ranking for on that? And so to me, when you're looking at that kind of page, the first thing you're thinking of is, well, do I need to write new content? No. When you're at 6.5, you're in striking distance at that point to rank higher for that term. And so at that point, you need to go in and go audit your existing content. Your existing content is your fastest route to ranking for more terms and getting more traffic for your business. Like something like 30% of traffic goes to the number 1 result and 15 goes to the number 2 result. And then after that, the returns are so diminishing, it's almost like not even worth ranking anymore. And so you need to get to position 1 and 2 as fast as you possibly can. So for a term like this, where we rank 6.5 on average, for all the impressions, this is over the last 3 months, by the way. So you're looking at about, 600 to 700 queries a month for that. And we're getting about 3.2% of the click-through rate. And if you're in position 6, that's to be expected. Well, go look at the content and say, what do you need? Do you need to update that to be more relevant for the year? This article was written in 2019. Do you need better internal linking? So do you need to link to better pages within within your website to help give that content more authority? Should you pursue backlinks? And so we don't really have backlinks covered as part of this webinar. I'm going to just say that right off the break. What I will say about backlinks is there's earned backlinks and then there's paid backlinks. And honestly, in industrial, you're going to need both. So like if you want to budget stuff, budgeting to go pay for backlinks, there are ways to do that. And I actually would, in some cases, recommend that if you want to get enough to rank. The other thing is like really simple stuff like alt tags on your images, schema markup, H1, H2 hierarchy, and improved page speed. Each of those 4 things I'm going to cover in the technical SEO section. So just hold tight on that a little bit. But that's what you need to look for within Google Search Console. So use Google Search Console as your first tool before you even start looking at third-party tools like SEMrush, Moz, or Ahrefs, because that's going to really give you a sense of where you can win faster. So I think another thing which, Aaron had already touched on a little bit, when you're looking at a term like industrial marketing strategy, well, I know I rank 6.5. Well, let me go see what it looks like on a SERP page. So just looking at this doesn't really mean anything unless you actually look at it on Google and see what the search looks like. And so let's go ahead and search industrial marketing strategy. And so what am I finding here? Above the fold, I see 4 ads. And below the fold, I see a people also ask box. And I'm actually, for that query, when I put it in at that given time, we were the number 1 ranking for it, which is awesome. But the thing is, when you're looking at 4 different companies bidding on that keyword, wanting to pay to get to the top, and then I got Google trying to basically create a lot of 0-click searches, well, then I need to make a decision for myself as a business. well, is it worth bidding on that keyword on top of pursuing the SEO for it? And then if so, are we willing to pay the cost for that? And then also another thing to consider, do I get conversions off of that keyword to make that worth bidding for me? And so those are just things to consider as you're doing keyword research and then looking at what to prioritize for your approach.
Right. You have an anonymous question. How do I set up the keywords on Google Console?
Oh, well, all right. So go to search.google.com. What you'll have to do, you have to verify your domain on Google Search Console. If you already, all right, anonymous attendee, if you have WordPress already set up, and just give me a yes if you do. If you have Search Console, if you're sorry, excuse me, let me start back over. If your website's on WordPress, you can download Google Site Kit, and then you can automatically get Google Search Console up and running on your website.
It's so easy to use, Site Kit.
So easy to use. Yeah, go download Site Kit.
Yeah. There's plenty of documentation too on how to do that.
Oh, how do you set up the keywords on Google Search Console? So, so you have console set up. So all you need to do is go to just go to performance search results there, and it's going to show you like what you're ranking for. There's another one that's called like keywords or something like that. Like they have a couple different UXs. I don't know why, but like search results here is going to be what shows up and is going to show you the keywords that you rank for. So that's how you would find that out. If you don't have that UX, email me. Can you email me afterwards, and I'd be happy to go through it with you on Zoom.
Yeah, I wonder, email Matt. I wonder maybe if like the legacy version keeps popping up when you log into Google Search Console, which was called Google Webmaster at one time.
Yeah. So again, context is everything when it comes to those search queries. So look at what you rank for, look at the pages that get you clicks and impressions from that query, evaluate your content, and then look at the SERP. The SERP is going to tell you if it's worth pursuing or not, or how to pursue it. Does it feature ads? Are there image packs? Where are the image packs on the SERP page? Does it have video? Where's video on the SERP page? Does it have people also ask, are any of those people also ask terms, the kind of terms you could use as like H2s on your content to refresh it or add to it, so you could go compete for that real estate on Google as well. So that would be kind of some of my approaches for SEO if I were doing this in-house for you. So a little checklist for you for SEO, on-page stuff you want to look at, unique images. If you all are doing stock images, you have no trademark to that kind of stuff, you cannot even hope to get image SEO for stock images. So if you're not doing unique images or unique design or creative, start doing it now. Like doing stock images does nothing to help you in terms of SEO. And actually it ends up just slowing your site down, and it's a pretty crappy user experience. So I cannot unrecommend enough stock images. Use unique images. H1, H2 hierarchy, strong internal and external linking. So when I mean internal, I mean linking to key service and product pages that are relevant to that content piece, whether that's top or if it's a product page, for instance, that you have, like having content where you add additional context behind the content. There's a couple really good examples, and I don't remember if I had them in this presentation or not. And then linking out to that content and then linking back to it within that blog piece, like really good internal linking strategy right there. External linking, like you most definitely want to be linking out to reliable external sources. Like linking out does help you. It's not always a ranking signal, but it certainly helps lend credibility to your content. And so another thing that I would recommend, anything that you're ranking for already in Google, where you're on page one, like if I were doing a video SEO strategy and people who are doing SEO way better than any of us are doing, like when they're starting their YouTube strategy for video SEO, first thing they're doing is they're going, what do I rank for already with my blog articles? Let's make that our starting point for video SEO. And I can tell you, as someone who's done this at the welding company, when I started doing YouTube for Binzel, the first thing I looked at was what blogs do I have that are already ranking well? Let's make content out of that. And then I was able, just by making video about that high performing piece of blog article, instantly was able to get that thing up to page one and dominate that search engine results page. So if you're looking to do YouTube SEO, video SEO, go start at articles where you're already doing pretty well. Off page, is page speed good? did you submit your content to Google to crawl? Because if Google can't crawl your content, they cannot rank it. Look at any duplicate content or 301s or things like that. You can use Google Search Console to help you identify any things where there's a canonical error. And then schema markup, which I'm going to cover when we get to the technical SEO section. I only recommend schema markup if you're already on page 1. It's a good way to get yourself from, that 6, 7, 8 position up to 1, 2, 3. But if you're already like ranking like 46 for that keyword, schema markup isn't going to help you get any higher. Like I would look at it as like that little bump that you may need to get higher up on the search engine results page, but don't look at it as panacea. It's one piece of many. And then lastly, is your content just good and interesting? Like if you don't make good and interesting content, no one's going to read it. Google's not going to look at it as a ranking signal. Looking at things like time on page for those articles, Google will pay attention to how long people spend on your site to see if you're actually providing a good content experience. So like Aaron said, it's not just blogs and articles, it's videos, it's people also ask boxes, it's image packs. So just know when you're looking at SEO, you're looking at it way beyond just blogs and articles at this point in time. All right, Aaron, back to you.
Totally. Okay. So just to kind of frame this up for everyone, we covered do's and don'ts. We covered the why and where is this going. Matt just talked about how to focus your time and approach it. So at some point, you're going to want to look at the data, right? Evaluate your results, your performance. So I'm going to move through this slide quickly for interest of time. But I think, again, with data in general, especially SEO data, is we should be real critical of it, right? It should be subjective to us, our business goals. We should read it. We should react to it. It's not, all data is not created equal. I think that's something you need to learn as a marketer, not just for SEO, but maybe we'll do a Google Analytics webinar one day. It'll be the same thought process, but we'll show some examples of this. But I really just want to articulate things like if you're using Moz, if you're using SEMrush, SpyFu, Ahrefs, they're all going to tell you something differently. One of the platforms is going to tell you to focus on keyword volume. One's going to tell you to focus on keyword difficulty and how easy it is to win. One's going to tell you that, well, if there's not that many number of results, you can probably show up there. There is no right answer. It's just, again, what is your tactic in this channel? And then how do those metrics apply to it? And what if you assign value to that data? One point I always like to talk about is data is dumb unless we assign value to it. Like the data can't hurt you until we tell us this is the metrics that matter to us. You should have that same kind of granularity with your SEO data. Then lastly, because this is one that is brought up all the time, is like if you don't have a volume on a keyword for a search query, like should you write content for it? Probably for us in industrial B2B, heck yes. It's probably just that your competitor doesn't have a piece of content, or there's just no content for this very specialized piece of manufacturing. I know, Matt, you have some examples from when you worked at Benzel. It just generally, maybe there just was never a piece of content written for it. So that shouldn't stop you. So Matt, you can go to the next slide so I can kind of show a visual here. All right, so I have 3 tools that we use here at Gorilla, SEMrush, Ahrefs, and Google Search Console. I had the same search query in all of them. It's different in every single one. So I just, again, don't be confused when this happens. I get confused too. And I think the point of what I would recommend is like focus on one thing. I would push you to focus on Google Search Console, the real search data you get from people landing on your site. Does that impact what you want to do in this channel? Then move to your tool set. Ahrefs is going to tell you something different than SEMrush. What do you want to focus on? If it's keyword difficulty because you think this keyword is part of our business and we can win it, then yeah, focus on that. If it's just generally you're trying to push more traffic to your website, then yeah, you want to focus on a keyword that has more search volume. That's also manageable to win. So, okay, I won't belabor this point, but I think just generally with data, you should be very critical of it and then apply it to kind of your business and your goals.
Matt, I believe you might be muted.
I'm gonna roll into technical SEO here. This is the last part of the webinar. It's gonna take about 5 minutes. Anyone who has questions, please drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. By the way, my technical SEO is not going to get super technical because we're not super technical people. So I'm not going to talk a lot about JavaScript and CSS. I'm going to talk a lot about doing the basics and doing them well. And then, for some of the more, if you have real technical problems, you probably are going to need a front end or a back end developer or someone freelance to help you with some of those things. And another point about technical SEO I'll make, it's a never ending process. It will never be perfect. It's always something that you're working towards. And so with that, let's roll through here. So one of the first things that I would tell anyone here to do, again, we've said Google Search Console a lot here because it's actually one of the really good SEO tools out there. And I'm just really bullish on it. Submit your sitemap to Google Search Console if you have not done so already. The way you do that on Google Search Console, there's just an index there called Sitemaps. And you can submit your sitemap right here where it says sitemap index processed successfully. It's an XML file just like these. You throw it in there and it basically tells Google the structure of your website. If you have a WordPress website, you're going to need to use a plugin like Yoast in order to do that. If you use Squarespace or Wix, it automatically generates one for you. You can also make it on Ahrefs has an XML sitemap generator as well that you could also make use of. It's a good tool. Another thing, focus on page speed by minimizing large files. If there's anything that bogs your website down more than anything, it's how many images you have and how fast and how much time it takes for them to load. So the difference between these two images, like looking at it right now, is basically nothing except one image is about a quarter the size of the other one. And in terms of, your server responding to that website coming up, that's a huge difference. And so minimizing large files just declutters your website, makes the page load faster, helps you for SEO. Page speed, Google is no joke about that anymore. So looking at Google Page Speed Insights, it's a really good way to look at the speed of your site overall. So there's a desktop and a mobile. You really want to do well on desktop at the very least. Mobile is harder to do for sure. And you may want to strip things away from the mobile version of your website in order to help you all rank better. And then overall, you want to be in that green as much as possible. But page speed, images and minifying CSS, couple plugins I'm about to recommend here can really help you with that. Schema Markup, someone asked about this. Yes, I do recommend Schema Markup, and Merkle has an awesome Schema Markup generator. It's technicalseo.com. It basically allows you to just input all the aspects of your content piece. You can also do it for product pages. You can also do it for services pages. You can do it for about us pages. They have added more and more stuff to this. It also allows you now to upload more images than you ever have before, which I think is also really cool. I think it's Merkle and schema.org admitting that image SEO is a thing and is going to be a bigger thing over time. I think them putting Schema Markup into images is proof of that. And so definitely something to keep in mind when you're doing Schema Markup, to also not neglect the images that you have on those articles or product pages as part of your Schema Markup. You want to give that structure as well to help Google recognize what it is. So again, my big rec for Schema Markup is if you're ranking already on page 1, it's a great way to give additional boost to it. If you're on page 2 or 3, you need to do a lot more things before you can think about Schema Markup. Like you need to look at the quality of the content. You need to look at possibly pursuing backlinks. Technical Schema Markup's one of the last things I would be looking at. To me, it's that added cherry on top. Lastly, speeding up your website. Let's say that you've done all the stuff with the images and you've done all this. This is for WordPress people only. Sorry, we do WordPress websites, so this is kind of what we work out of when we do things around page speed. WP Rocket is an awesome plugin to use to help speed up your website. And then there's another one called Asset Cleanup. It's a paid plugin. It's $50, but it's excellent because what's fascinating about plugins with WordPress is when you download a plugin like Contact Form 7, for instance, that plugin code actually appears on every single page of your website, including the pages where you don't have the form. And so Asset Cleanup is actually a way for you to remove plugin code from pages where you don't want them, and it helps speed up your website a lot. Lastly, I would say hosting is another thing. So GoDaddy's not considered one of the better hosting places. Look at your hosting. Cloudways is a really good hosting platform. Kinsta is universally considered a very good hosting platform as well. So those are two that I would definitely recommend for you when you look at it. There's a really good resource that we're going to have on this last slide here for you all to think about. Aaron or Grace, do you have anything to add on the technical side?
No, I think you did a great job of giving a primer that stays at a certain level.
Stays at SEO for the rest of this level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick, and I can't turn my video back on for whatever reason, but I think with the technical SEO piece, we kept it last because I think that's how we need to think about it is like, first and foremost, write content for your audience, do those do's and don'ts, follow the why, the where it's going, follow our approach to SEO in 2021, and then worry about the technical. I think a lot of people start with the technical, and that's where we kind of fail. That's the trap.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. All right. Well, that's everything I got. Did y'all find this helpful, by the way? You can say yes or no in the chat. I'm okay definitely hearing no. And lastly, if y'all have any questions, man, please drop them in the chat right now, or drop them in the Q&A panel. I'll be happy to answer some of them for you. It can be related to content. It can be related to like some of the technical stuff. My hope is that you're able to take some of this stuff and apply it for yourselves and see results. And I really hope you all take a good amount from this and are able to take action on it. We really want to make this an accessible SEO webinar, because I recognize most people here are marketing managers or marketing specialists and are, or directors who are pressed for time and can't really get like super deep into it because you're dealing with 1,000 things at once. And I just want to make sure we gave you stuff that you were able to apply that wasn't going to just dominate your time, so you could do other things. Recognize a lot of you all are more generalists than specialists. So hopefully that was useful for you all. And we'll stick around for just comments if you have questions. If not, we will send the slide deck. We will send you the recording. You'll have access to these links. If you want to reach out to Grace or Aaron or myself, you can hit us up on LinkedIn. Whoever the anonymous attendee was, if you want to email me, I would be happy to look at your Google Search Console and see if I can help you find those keyword terms, because you need that. And we don't have anything else from anyone. Thank you all so much for your time, and especially people like Craig and Allison and Mary, who come like week after week month after month after month. I just really appreciate your all's coming. Rachel as well. Rachel's been to quite a few. Thank you all so much for just coming and joining us every month for Industrial Marketing Live. We definitely appreciate your all's trust in us and trust that we'll help you get better. And yeah, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.